Morgantown Planning Commission to order. Unless anyone wants me to, I'm not going to read the pre-meeting announcement. Okay. Move to the agenda. First item on the agenda is general public comments. Are there any comments on matters not on the agenda? Okay, next is meeting minutes from August 14th. No, wait, I'm wrong.
I was like, wait, which ones?
September 11th. I was on the wrong page. Meeting minutes from September 11th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting minutes from October 9th.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. Next item is MAP 25-108, DeAndre Mason, 126 Simpson Street.
Mr. President, thank you. Before I turn over to Seth Cardwell, our new city planner, just wanted to welcome him aboard. Seth comes to us from the West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center at WVU, where he helped communities inventory and develop strategies to mitigate slum and blighted property. Just for your information, Seth has a master's degree from WVU in public administration and was recently recognized as an AICP candidate, which is a critical milestone to becoming a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners. It has been a pleasure working with Seth since he came on board last month, and we look forward to working with you all on a variety of projects coming up in the new year as it pertains to updating some of the planning and zoning code. So thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Seth.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ricky. So this is my first staff report summary. The applicant tonight, which owns the property at 126 Simpson Street. The property is a pre-existing non-conforming use in the R1A single-family residential district. He is seeking a zoning map amendment to rezone the property to R2. He intends to use the principal structure as a dwelling two-family, which alters the non-conforming use to another non-conforming use in the R1A district. Therefore, the applicant is seeking to rezone that property to the R2, where that use is permitted by right. Refer to the maps up here. That's just a quick parcel view of the property at 126 Simpson, outlined in yellow. This is a view of the zoning with the property outlined in red. The yellow dash is the downtown overlay district. And this is a view looking northwest of the property on Simpson Street. The property is there on the left. And that is just another view of the property. And looking at some of the analysis of this, as per the comprehensive plan, the future land use outlines the property as high-intensity residential. So if you refer to the compatible use types chart on the right-hand side, you'll see that there are a range of uses compatible with the high-intensity residential. And that concludes the staff report for.
They want to zone it R2, right?
Correct. Yes.
Where is the R2 around it?
No.
It is all R1. It's all R1A right now.
So you just want one piece of R2 in the middle of R1A?
Yes. So if you refer to the map that's from the Monongalia County Parcel Viewer, it's got the address points on it. So the address points are denoted in the blue little dots. And there appear to be a number of pre-existing non-conforming uses of multifamily dwellings in close proximity around it. The outline for the high-intensity residential also promotes that type of development where contextually appropriate for the neighborhood.
I understand that, but how is this not spot zoning since there isn't any R2 around it? And I understand there's non-conforming uses, but the non-conforming uses are still in the R1A, right?
So, Mr. President, if I may, and we discussed this with our city attorney, if the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and more particularly the future land use map, it wouldn't necessarily be considered spot use zoning or spot zoning because the future use and the rezoning of that property is consistent with what the city desires to see there in the future.
Yeah, but I think you have to rezone the whole thing. That's what I think, but anyway, anybody else have any questions?
We had the same discussion last time.
Was there any discussion with the applicant about the other item on our agenda for continuation of non-conforming uses that have expired and waiting for that process to play out?
I don't believe we had that direct conversation, but I believe that there's a need or a want to try to occupy the property as quickly as possible.
Well, I understand that. We
And
have to do
the
it.
applicant is here, so they can kind of speak to that, but this is like, similarly, I think what Mr. Petro said before, it's a process and discussion we've had before, and similar items have come before the commission in the past. Hopefully, item 2 will maybe address some of those things.
So this was in non-conforming use, but then out of lease for a while? Is that the idea?
So he is wanting to, it was a non-conforming use for a multifamily dwelling. He's wanting to convert it to a 2-family dwelling, which converts it from a non-conforming use to another non-conforming use.
In the current district.
Okay, so has the current non-conforming use expired? By that, I mean, if it's not used as that for a year, then it didn't.
That has not been determined yet. We've been talking to the applicant, but that has not been determined yet. Determined that year and a day has passed.
Okay.
What's holding up that determination?
Communication,
Okay, is the applicant here?
yes.
How you guys doing?
Good.
All right, so as they address, I am DeAndre, the owner of 126 Simpson Street. So yeah, they pretty much explained it as best as I could. The property was already existing as either a single family or a multifamily use, and based on the whole conditional use thing in that area is that you can't change it from a 3 to a 2, but I believe that the property works better functionally as a 2-unit. I can show you some pictures that are linked to the the application, kind of show you why it makes more sense. It's safer, it cuts down on the parking issues in that area, it's a really small street. We pretty much only have off-street parking available, so we're trying to make it go from a 3 to a 2. Also, there's more work that we would have to do in order to make it an official 3 units. We already have a letter of compliance whenever we put the property under contract back in July. The property was already given to us with the letter of compliance as a 3-unit, but all the due diligence that I did on public record database said that the property was a 2-unit or a duplex. So on my due diligence, everything I saw on all the public record databases was that it was a two-family unit or a 2-family dwelling. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there that kind of supports this amendment. I know the area is mainly R1A, but there's other duplexes, triplexes, quads in the area. So yeah, if we just move forward to any questions that you have, and then I can kind of give you guys an idea of what we plan to do, converting it to a 3 to a 2.
Is it currently leased out?
No.
How long has it not been leased?
So we put the property in the contract back in July. The sellers, to my knowledge, had the place rented out to their children that went to school here. Both buildings, it's 2 lots, 2 properties. There's a carriage house in the back. They had both of those rented out, and like you said, I guess it's been a year and a day, you said?
So that's what we're trying to confirm with you, but
Okay, yeah, well, we've only owned the property for a couple months, and before that, it had been rented out previously.
Do you know when it was last rented out?
I wasn't the owner at the time, so I don't know when the leases ended. There was furniture and all types of stuff in there, so.
So how about when you purchased it and went under contract in July? Were there people living in it?
I believe they were moving out.
Okay.
Yeah, whenever we went to the property, there were multiple times they were moving stuff out of there, so. It was vacant when I was doing my, inspection phase, but it was, there was furniture, couches, fridges, books, all that stuff in there.
Okay. Ricky, would the city have any information on when it was last rented out? You guys just do compliance, you don't care when it's rented out, right?
we have the compliance letters, and as the applicant mentioned, it was reissued back in July. Our records go back to the early 80s of that property being multi-use.
And
Multi-family use.
always 3 or 2 or what?
What is it?
Always 3 units or 2 units, what was it?
It was 3 units.
Okay.
Mr. President, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Do you know how many meters are on the property, electric meters?
2.
Okay.
2 gas meters, 2 electric meters.
Is it one for the, I guess, the primary residence, and then one for, you said there was a ADU in the back, or a
Yeah.
carriage house? So it's 2 separate?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. I know that doesn't really solve our 1-year discrepancy, but that's where I'm hung up a little bit, but.
If we wouldn't have had this kind of conflict with trying to just get it rezoned, we would already had it rented out. So if it's a year and a day, you know, we closed back in the end of September. You know, we could have, if we wanted to, rented it out immediately in October, but since we have this issue of getting approval and, you know what I mean, just government stuff where you gotta wait a little bit to get things done, you know, we would have already had it rented out before that year in 1 day, you know what I mean?
And there's not like a listing or anything that you can find even from August or anything, or year previous 6 months before you got there that was even being rented out?
No, the best I could do is I could ask the realtor I work with to see if we can get something from
Gotcha.
the sellers.
I mean, that's all I would need if they had something that said that they've been renting it out.
Seems to me like the opposite should be true. The city should have to prove that it's no longer,
Yeah.
that it was not in use.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
And this really doesn't speak to the rezoning, it speaks to more of a continue the current non-conforming use than anything.
If I may, Mr. President, the proposed use is actually another non-conforming use, so
I understand that, but I guess what I'm saying is if that fails, and it hasn't been a year and a day, they can
Then
still
they can go
continue
back.
with their current non-conforming use,
correct,
is what I'm saying.
that is correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
One last one, sorry.
no, please.
So the main house that has 3 units in it currently?
That's what the compliance letter says.
Okay.
If you guys actually laid eyes on the property, you would see that it's more set up as really like a single-family unit. It's just a
Right.
massive house. It's got 3 floors. The 3rd unit is technically the attic. And it being an attic, it's probably like 400 square feet. It'd be super small for someone to live up there.
Sure.
That'd be a 3rd person in there having to navigate through. It would just make the layout really weird. We would have to add new walls and fire doors and whatnot. If it's used as 2, the attic can be pretty much used as like a 2nd bedroom or storage area for that 2nd unit because it's an up-down type duplex.
Right, and in that portion, is there 2 kitchens or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, there's two kitchens. There's a bathroom on each floor, and there's multiple bedrooms on each floor, so living room, all that. So there's no like actual like construction that we're gonna have to do a ton of work to it.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And the carriage house you said in the back?
Mhm.
And that would not be
Part of it.
part of it?
No, that's where I'll be living and kind of remodeling over time, yeah. That won't be rented out, that's kind of confusing too, because that's what I thought, is that the carriage house was included in that letter of compliance as that 3rd unit, because it said it was 3 units, so the property database and, you know what I mean, public record was saying it was 2-family for the main house, and then the back house is pretty much just a single-family unit. So I'm getting the letter of compliance thinking, oh, it's these 2 for the main house, and then the back carriage house would be the next unit if I wanted to rent it out myself. But we're not planning on renting that out, no.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So, anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone in opposition? Okay, can we get staff recommendations?
Yes. So the proposed zoning reclassification of the property weds the existing development character with some of the future land reuses that are outlined above up here. If the property were to be rezoned, the applicant's desired end use, which is the dwelling 2-family, would be permitted by right. So given the structure and the previous use of the property, staff recommend that the property be rezoned from an R1A single-family residential to R2 single and 2-family residential.
Okay. discussion?
I have another question.
Sure.
Does rezoning have any effect on that, on the use of the ADU in the back?
So it is my understanding that the ADU is on a separate parcel
Oh.
than the principal structure, according to the Monongalia County parcel viewer and everything that I viewed.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions?
I would say for matter of discussion, I wish we could even delay this vote, even just look on a quick Google search to see if you could find any type of a listing or something of advertising that.
We do have a
But-
listing, I'm sorry, we
but-
do have a listing up, but we weren't going to rent it out until we
Knew.
got a final say from you guys, because we didn't, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And we did do a quick Zillow search, and it did represent who was listing it, but it wasn't a time of when it came
Sure,
on.
sure, yeah, okay.
But I understand.
Yeah,
There were also, when we did the searching, there was no posting of any rental data from it. It was only when the property transferred ownership.
sure.
So,
But I think really that's not the issue. The issue is whether we're going to stick an R2 in the middle of R1A with nothing else around it.
Right.
That's the issue.
Yeah, well, I was trying to avoid the rezoning altogether.
Yeah, I mean,
And so.
but if we don't rezone it, and it's not been a year and a day, they can have 3 units but only rent 2, or whatever they want to do.
Correct.
They can continue the non-conforming use, and then we'll see about the, whatever comes next, this proposed text amendment, and if it passes, then they need to, want to redo it, then they come back. But-
Sure, sure.
But I don't think anything's stopping them from continuing along with the current non-conforming use. My big concern is,
This
I'm gonna call it
potential
spot zoning.
Yes.
I'm
Right,
gonna
yeah.
call it spot zoning.
I understand, and I know we've had that discussion as a commission before, and that's kind of my gut instincts is the same as yours, that this is spot zoning, but we have a commission have recommended approval to council, so I feel it's okay. It does kind of a little strange, especially on the heels of a non-conforming kind of text amendment coming through, so it seemed to take care of it, but I would just say as my discussion piece that I'd be willing to approve this rezoning just to be consistent with our previous recommendations in the past.
Yeah, see, I think previously we have avoided spot zoning, and that's usually been one of our first questions is, how is this not spot zoning? Which I think was my first question.
What was the situation on Height Street? Was that entirely surrounded in R1A when we rezoned that piece of property?
Yes.
And I think that was the same thing we got out of this, it says, oh, it's consistent with the plan, so we have to do
Right.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
I was against that, but you weren't here.
I wasn't here yet.
Just point out. No, maybe another question, is there any kind of tax records that would help us determine if it was?
That's what I was trying to do, but I don't have access per address.
I think you looked at that.
But my guess is the real estate taxes are just going to go to the owner and.
But if they have if the person living there has personal property, it would have been registered.
It really seems to me that unless the city can say, this is no longer grandfathered because it's been out of use, we should assume that it is still compliant.
And I agree with that. And I agree with that. And they have the letter of compliance as of September.
July, yeah.
Or July, so I think they can continue with the current non-conforming use, and it doesn't have to be rezoned.
As long as that year and the day has not come and gone.
Well, you guys gave them a letter of compliance within the last 6 months, right?
Right, but that can be, right, but
There you
that can
go.
also be, the property can be vacant and turning over sometimes. The inspections is based on the number of units and what's being requested at the time. And I believe that the previous owner is the one who requested or who got the property to be, the letter of compliance.
Okay, so-
But
Right, so here's what I'm hearing. One, when they were doing their inspections, people were moving out, which leads me to believe that people were in there as of July. Two, you guys gave them a letter of compliance within the last 6 months. So within the last 6 months, all the evidence I see points to people living there and the non-conforming use continuing. You guys got anything else to disprove that?
No, sir.
Okay? So I don't see why the current non-conforming use can't continue. And I understand that's not what you necessarily want to do,
But it's something that you could do.
but it's something you can do, right? So it can still stay as a 3. You don't have to rent it out as 3. You don't have to rent to 3 separate people, but you can still continue with the current non-conforming use because it hasn't been a year that it hasn't been used as that. And it doesn't have to be rezoned. Because my concern is the rezoning.
If there's concerns on that, and just because trying to work through it, maybe consider a motion to table to find that out, and if it's,
Okay, so my problem with that is if we keep tabling, and if we table too long, I don't want to table him out of a non-conforming use.
for sure.
That's what I don't want to do.
I think we can make that determination in the next, having
Well,
communication in the next.
I guess, why would you make that determination? Because you already gave him a letter of compliance. I think you already have. That's just me, though.
I agree with the president that it seems like they have a vested interest at this point. And I would rather, we can avoid the whole mess of whether it's a spot zoning altogether if we just go ahead and, as a commission, say that it's our belief that it's a legal non-conforming. And I would so add too, if you do want to change it to a proper duplex, that because that's going from 3 to 2, that's a lesser of a non-conforming use. And so you could, my understanding, also convert it to a duplex as opposed to threeplex.
But again, if he has a letter of compliance to rent to 3 people, that doesn't mean he has to rent to 3 people.
That's true.
That's correct.
Yeah,
And if it's not set up where there's 3 separate doorways in,
right.
you can charge more for the unit that's got the upstairs with it. Just me.
Sure.
I don't know. I just don't like the spot zone. Anyway, any other discussion?
Speaking to your concern, if we table this, what are the assurances that we get that we don't put the applicant in a bad situation?
We don't.
We don't.
I don't think.
The one thing I would say to that is, obviously, we would be looking at are they trying to rectify the situation? So if there was a delay with what we're going through right now, that would not be put against the applicant.
Okay.
So if we found out like tomorrow is the year and a day, we would obviously work with the applicant because we're here now before the commission, so.
I just think we can avoid everything.
I agree.
That's the proper use of government, avoiding everything, right? Okay.
You've got a lot on your plate. Look into something else. This one is compliant.
Yeah, it's got its letter of compliance. Yeah, so I think what we,
Well, I'll make I will make a motion that we recommend to council to deny the application with the understanding that this is actually a legal non-conforming use as evidenced by the compliance in July. So that way we are avoiding the rezoning, but we are deeming this an acceptable use and should continue as such.
Second.
okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Does everyone understand the motion?
Yes, it was complicated, but I think I
Okay.
got the gist of it.
I'm with it now.
I was working through it, but it's
Yeah.
good. We're good. And we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And it looks unanimous. Okay, so do you understand what we did?
Yeah, it's gonna stay non-conforming use, keep the current zoning, but I can rent it out to, if I want to.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's a legal,
Up to 3 families.
it's a legal non-conforming use, and you can rent it out tomorrow if you want.
Roger that, thank you.
Okay?
And we'll follow up with writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got? Where's my meeting packet? Let me close my packet. Okay. Item B is a proposed amendment to Article 1373 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code establishing a process for revival of the banded non-conforming uses and other updates.
So, Mr. President, the proposed amendments would give applicants an opportunity to revive pre-existing non-conforming uses associated with the properties that are no longer grandfathered. The process to revive a non-conforming use would require an application, review by staff, public hearing, and determination by the Planning Commission. Said determination would then be submitted to the applicant and Morgantown City Council. If that determination was not appealed to by the applicant to City Council, or if City Council did not put the item on the agenda within 30 days of receiving notice, the determination would go into effect. Conversely, if the determination was appealed to City Council, or City Council took the matter up within the 30-day and a future agenda, the determination would not go into effect and be put on hold until the council would make a determination further. That will conclude staff's comments.
Okay, so if I understand what y'all want us to do, is basically say, yes, you have a non-conforming use, and you abandon that non-conforming use for a year and a day. And under, as I understand it, our ordinances, city charter, probably even state code, once you abandon it for a year and a day, it ceases to be a legal non-conforming use. You just want to be able to revive that legal non-conforming use.
What was previously there, not another code.
Yeah, I understand. How does that comport with state code?
Pardon me?
How does that comport with state code?
So according to, let me see here, quick, pull up my notes. So under West Virginia State Code 8A7-10-C, specifically gives City Council the authority to make ordinance change relative to the revival of non-conforming uses. And quoting a section of the code, a zoning ordinance may provide for the enlargement or an extension of a non-conforming use or the change from one non-conforming use to another.
Okay. Read that again.
It's that paragraph,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, is there a page number for that?
On the first, of the actual ordinance, it's that second to last paragraph, first line,
Okay.
in accordance with WVA code.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, enlarged or extended. Does it say revived? It does not.
You can't enlarge, you can't extend, and you can't change from one to another.
Okay.
Furthermore, on, I mean, Mr. President, under West Virginia Code 8A7-11, which describes the conditions under which a variance is required to be issued by the Board of Zoning Appeals, limits City Council's authority, or does not limit City Council's authority to authorize the extension of a non-conforming use.
Again, that word extension, that means it exists and it continues to exist and you just make it longer. It doesn't mean it expired and then you start it again.
I know from going back and doing a little research and working with the city attorney on this, there has been instances where the BZA has actually granted an extension of a nonconformity after that grandfather use had ended.
It's not an extension. I'm sorry, I'm dominating the conversation. Go ahead, everybody.
Yeah, I would assume, so long as we got the authority to do this, that it's fine, yeah. And so as long as Ryan has, our city attorney has his blessing, I'd be fine with it. There's a couple of things, so did the city attorney write this, Ricky? Do you guys feel comfortable with understanding this? Because this, I had to read it a few times. It's not very user-friendly, I will say. Just to parts particularly on this, after the, just kind of looking at particularly how to revive and everything like that. It's a little, I mean, I'd rather let the wordsmiths work with, but if you guys are on board with it, that's all that really matters to me in council. But that's one thing I've noticed. One thing is it seems to me that, has a conditional use, like that process been investigated as rather than, because it just seems weird for us as a planning commission, that's a quasi judicial body, to be referring to council what, our recommendation is as far as the revival of this situation. It seems like to me that it could just be how we can quantify the extension of this use as a conditional use and let the BZA handle that through their already stated rules and procedures on how to do that. So it's very similar to a variance, and that seems to be the more appropriate, to me, way of doing this. It seems a little weird that it's like 35 days and we make a recommendation and then council can review, and then two, that the applicant can appeal council's decision back to council. It seems a little messy, but.
And that was my question too, is if it's a variance from a zoning issue, because it's a non-conforming use and you want to put it in there, that's a BZA function, I think, rather than a planning commission function. Right?
I think it was sent to this body based on previous conversations at these meetings, particularly with Commissioner Stranko, who thought that the Planning Commission should hold a public hearing on these matters.
But the BZA holds public hearings on the matters. And I think it may be our role to discuss whether this ordinance should be recommended to City Council, but if this ordinance passes City Council, then I think realistically the decision function has to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals, because it's a variance from a zoning ordinance, not a let's zone it this way. It's already zoned this way. Let's talk to this body to see if we can use it a different way. That's how I think it's got to work. I mean, we can recommend the approval, disapproval of this ordinance, but if it's approved, I think we don't do anything else with it. That's Board of Zoning Appeals. That's just my opinion.
So then your recommendation, Mr. President, would be to alter the way that that's outlined. That basically last page where it goes through the appeals process and notification process, that would need to be altered. That would be your recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's BZA function, not a planning commission function. Because we're planning, we're not
right. So
on the ground zoning.
Maybe an agreement in the way to consider revivals of these non-conforming uses, but the manner in which we do it would be through the Board of Zoning Appeals and not through Planning Commission. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I have a disagreement on the revival, but yes, if it gets revived, if it should pass, then I think the function, the administrative function isn't with us, it's with BZA.
I'd agree with that. And it seems that you could just lop it on as a conditional use, whether you have to say like this type of wouldn't have been a non-conforming use is considered a conditional use in a table of uses or something like that, but it seems to go more in the way that President Peters is talking about. Sorry, I called you the master. Sorry about that. Mr. Peters, yeah. That it should go that way, and just looking at state statute and just, what our code of ordinances already has, we already have kind of a mechanism for that, and rather than muddy the waters, just kind of tag that onto that process, knowing that this is a way to deal with non-conforming uses.
And then another question I have is, if it goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, then can it just go to the Board of Zoning Appeals now without a change in the ordinance? Because they can just go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and say, hey, I had this non-conforming use, I want to make it this, can you let me do it? And then they have to state their case to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they either approve it or deny it. I don't see why you have to change an ordinance, because I think that's something they already can do, right?
On at least one occasion, I think they did do an extension, but
So I don't know.
I don't know what the timeline, if it was, yeah.
I don't know why we have to change the ordinance. If we're just going back to having the Board of Zoning Appeals look at it anyway, that's what they already did. Again, just me.
I agree. My understanding was always that a variance couldn't be for a use, a non-conforming use. It could only be for the actual structure or setbacks. And that why it has to be, yeah, there was not, but I'm not sure, I'm not, you know,
But like, home operated businesses,
right,
that's the use, right?
Yeah.
And that goes to BZA
right. But as a conditional use, though, not as a,
as a non-conforming.
gotcha.
Yeah, the home occupation class 2 requires a conditional use, and it's in the
Okay.
table as such.
Okay.
So if I put this in a motion and recommendation, it would be to kind of go that route of the BZA / conditional use or variance.
Here's what, I think it might be better, instead of putting in the motion saying, let's move to send it to city council, but with these changes, let's see the changes first. Is there a big hurry for this? You're on council. Well, you
No,
run
and
the
I
council.
actually
You own the council,
anticipated
right?
attorney, I'm there. I anticipated Attorney Simonton being here to answer questions, so maybe you and I can have another discussion with him about some of these and come back to the next meeting of the Planning Commission with Attorney Simonton, so we can make some updates and then he can be here to answer questions.
Yeah, so maybe look at it as going to the BZA rather than us rewriting that, and then he can come and answer the questions. So more than that, just, I guess move the table would be, but I can't make a motion.
I move to table.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't let you guys talk about that one. I know you wanted to talk, didn't you, Dave?
Help, Jim.
You wanted to talk, didn't you, Dave?
I feel sorry for you.
Well, you can come back in January, maybe it won't be so cold.
Help me.
Okay, I threw this away again, let's see. What's next?
Committee report, stuff's on it.
Committee reports, there you go, you got it. Any committee reports? Staff comments?
No additional
Nope.
staff comments.
Okay, anything for the good of the commission?
Welcome, Seth.
Welcome, Seth.
Yes, welcome. You had a fun first meeting, right?
What was it?
You had a fun first meeting, right?
Yeah, eventful.
Okay, anyone for adjournment?
Move to adjourn?
Okay, let's go.